Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I want to make sure that there's actually recording. I really have appreciated the whole experience, and I mean, setting aside all the COVID stuff, having had the opportunity to work with you has been awesome, and I'm looking forward to maybe one day being an administrator like you. So here's hoping.
It'll happen.
There you go. That's my hope anyway. So the whole idea is I want to go through basically each of the 10 standards. We had, the one required for each activity, and then 3 to 4 or so activities more.
Yes.
And the idea is really just to kind of talk about, what I learned, what I took away from the experience. So the first one is the mission, vision, and core values. And this particular activity was a central office meeting where I met with the leadership team to discuss how the pandemic was going to force the program in summer learning to go first partially virtual and partially brick and mortar or face-to-face. And then, of course, the wind blew again. Numbers spiked and it changed us again. Mm-hmm. So it made us, while maintaining our vision and the mission and our core values, we had to retool and completely change how we were going to deliver instruction.
Very quickly, too.
So, which, by the way, that started today. And
yes,
I've got some great video clips from the teachers sending me stuff, so
awesome.
It's fantastic. So, and in addition to that, I had, several levels, high school, middle school, and all that stuff that were rolled into that. Mm. Second one was on ethics and professional norms. And in particular, the required activity was just really making a comparison of the Alabama code of ethics and comparing it with the system code of ethics. Mm-hmm. So I did that. Actually had an interesting meeting with the high school teachers, and they were really welcoming and allowed me in, but watching the dynamics in the high school level faculty meeting, leadership meeting, it's a completely different animal from the elementary or even the middle. Mm-hmm. And so it was interesting. And then of course talking about the professional standards, you've got people who are specialists in their specific field.
Yes. Versus
generalists like I am in the elementary, right? So that was just an interesting thing. And then, of course, mm-hmm. I had more activities in the middle school and elementary school in that standard as well. That basically, for the most part, have all had a lot to do with either the IB, mm-hmm. which I'm the IB coordinator, or instructional coaching role as the curriculum writer for the summer learning program. So that was pretty, again, they were all pretty awesome, very time-consuming, and lots of digital. Very few face-to-face things anymore.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the third one is the it's equity and cultural responsiveness. And so in this one in particular, I created an online, it's called a s'more. This is a totally new thing to me, but it's basically like a flyer or a brochure online, mm-hmm. which I thought was pretty cool. And what we were doing is trying to get the word out there about how the school I was working with, in this case Tuscaloosa Magna Elementary, how we're a very diverse and very inclusive or inclusion-minded school. And so we did that, and then I had to have some peer reviews, and so those are all actually linked in the activity. Wow. It's pretty neat. It was funny because one of the teachers actually sent me a screenshot of his computer, and in the background he's sitting at the beach. I'm like, I'm sitting at my table. That's just how it was. But in like the other previous standards I go through, I've got some high school, middle school, and more elementary school stuff, as well as a central office one that had to do with the IB continuum going through all the levels, elementary, middle, and high school.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
really cool.
An interesting challenge because as an IB coordinator in the primary years program, which is me, mm-hmm. it's not the same as what is Wagenheim's job in the middle years program or Heinz's job in the DP, the diploma program. It's all the same philosophy, but it's not the same. You go through different. Yes, it was fun. It hurt a little bit, but we were able to get through it, and I had their help with it, so I got some middle school and high school experience in that.
Oh, awesome.
And then the curriculum instruction and assessment. This has been both the best part and the worst part. The best part because this is what I actually love to do. Like this is where I feel like I have a real strength. Mm-hmm. But with the pandemic and things like that, changing what's expected in the curriculum, how we're going to assess. I've got yes. teachers who today, day one, sent me video clips from either Seesaw or Flipgrid from quick first time assessment. Just say, hey, talk through this math problem on base 10 in first grade. I was just like, yes. So this standard
That's
was
awesome.
was about having a plan, right? The
Mhm.
instructional plan. So I used our summer learning plan, and then we literally created 5 different scenarios from when the original plan, which was 15 programs, 14 buildings, 5,000 students,
Yes.
down to how it finished, no buildings, 900 kids invited, the neediest 900 kids in our system.
Yes.
We got 460 of them to sign on virtually. But having a plan and then having steps for different plans throughout. So that was a challenge. Working with that leadership team was awesome, but that hurt.
I'm sure that was a fabulous experience.
It was, but it hurt.
Very painful.
Yes. So the next standard, number 5, is community of care and support. And this was all really about looking at, specifically we were looking at our anti-bullying policy. So the HALT program is part of it, but the bullying stuff has gone into all new levels and all new layers for all, many reasons, whether it's gender identity, non-identity, conformity, and of course in our school we're a very diverse school, so we have a lot of those, I'll call them issues, to deal with. And then you factor in, now we're in the digital world, so you've got to add the cyberbullying and all that. So I spent some time interviewing both an elementary and middle school and high school counselor, just to say, how does the policy reflect in your building and in your practices, and then where does that line up with what our core values are? So it just, again, it circles back around, which I get it's supposed to. It's an embarrassment of riches in that we're all, the 3 schools I was talking with were all IB schools. So this is actually built in. Being inclusive is built in to our whole philosophy.
Yes.
That is not the case in the quote-unquote regular school.
Sadly,
always. And so it's a natural social emotional learning, and accepting and being tolerant is part of what we do every day, whereas that's something that's rather foreign to a lot of kids elsewhere, a lot of schools elsewhere. The next one was professional capacity. I think this one was my next most favorite, because this for me is about helping teachers improve their own practice. And so and then the main project that I worked on was adding to a website. You create a website, but I already had one from a previous course. So what I did was I added a completely 4 extra sections that include like recruiting teachers, getting the right teachers in front of the right group of students. So often we have a teacher who's 20 years into the career and they're never going to move. Well, that may not be the best for those students. So it's a project about recruiting, interviewing, hiring process, and then retaining them. But retaining them with the understanding that there might be movement based on what the school needs are. And so that was an interesting sort of thing. And ultimately I put together a few pages that say, come work for us. This is like no other. And that was the big project in that one. And then from there I went through and worked with central office leadership team on how they go about the process of hiring and placing teachers based on their needs. And it's a sticky place, because you're talking, and one of my reflections is about the legal issues that could come up. A lot of confrontation, I would imagine, but at the end it's about, we're serving the students, not serving you or your ego. And so that was an interesting thing. And then I had to bring that to the literacy team at central office, which was pretty awesome, because I've been working with them through the instructional coach role that I have. So it was really neat. A few more to go. The next one is the Standard 7 is professional community for teachers and staff. And so this was all about, the specific requirement was to meet with a grade level or a department. And I chose 3rd grade, and the 3rd grade teachers at Magnet fairly well from your time there. And we zeroed in on the PLC process. So I created a presentation, and I re-led them through, and we did a little retooling on the 4 essential questions. What do we want every student to learn? How are we going to know when they've mastered the content that we're teaching? What are you going to do for the kids who don't get it? So there's your intervention, your small group, your tier 2 sort of instruction. And then of course, what are you going to do for the kids who knew it before you taught it? Okay, well that's another intervention. and it's not tier 2 necessarily, but this is where I can enrich you or deepen your learning and understanding. So we talked about that, and it's pretty intense, but it was also nice and compact because this group of teachers really embraces the PLC. And
oh, I'm sure they
so
get it, don't they?
And yes, they get it. And I've actually, in part of one of my artifacts, I'm going to provide their PLC document that they've been working on for the entire year. It's just, and it's their whole planning and all the instruction and all the expected outcomes and all. I mean, it's a brilliant document.
Love to see that.
I will certainly share that with you as well.
Awesome.
And so again, and I go through each one of these. I've tried almost every single standard. I was able to address all 4 levels. Central office, and then high school, middle, and elementary. Some I may have missed, like a high school, but I feel like I made up for that in others where I might have gotten them twice.
Right.
So the 8th standard is meaningful engagement of families and communities. And again, this is where that in the school that I'm in Tuscaloosa Magnet, we have a community partnership program established, long-standing, built in. And so looking at how we can use technology to kind of promote that and show that and show the ways in which we interact with our families, but not just our families, our local businesses, our local leadership, in whether it's in churches or civil rights groups. I mean, they're all in our building every week during the partnership program. And then, through the rest of that standard, it's a lot of, activities that I did. We created a brochure for back to school, which I was hopeful to actually include the new plan for starting up school again, but I was asked by my administrator not to include that because it may change, and she wouldn't want that to, be seen as this is what we're going to do, and if it changes, then it makes me maybe look like it wasn't either honest or whatever.
Right.
So she was just like, maybe that wouldn't be a good idea. So I stripped that out of it.
Right.
But it worked out pretty cool. I made a video basically, and it ended with the old propaganda poster, "We want you," and so that's how we were trying to get more community members involved in the partnership. There's videos in there.
How creative!
It was fun. Again, that was like, yay. And a lot of the activities in that particular standard were very much like that. Operations and management. This for me, it's not just buses being on time and lunch lines being efficient and food stuff being ordered and all that. I had to create a Voki. I'd never heard of a Voki before, so that was exactly. It's an avatar. But it's an animated, and you type in the text, or you can speak the text, and it will then speak it back out for you. So I created one. Actually, I created 2 to get the 5 key indicators, from that standard. So that was a lot of fun. It has to do with like graduation rates, attendance rates, and things like that. The things that really. Well, that's what we get graded on by the state. Test scores or achievement scores, and and attendance of students and graduation rates and all those. There you go. That's your operations and management. But I also really liked that in several other activities, it took me back into the personnel side of things. Like, okay, how are you going to hire and place those teachers? Because placing those teachers, that's going to be based on the students you have, not based on who's had more experience in that subject or that grade level or whatever. So I guess it was enlightening to know that that's a possibility, and even it's an expectation. So, and the last thing was, this was like Mr. Holland's opus for me, the school improvement standard. So they're looking at the school improvement plan. Well, in our school system, it's all about the mid-year review. You get, you take your ASIP,
Yes, sir.
and you drill it down into the mid-year review. So I actually used the mid-year review from both the elementary and the middle schools. And I was able to, for my own benefit, I was able to make comparisons side by side, but then to look at how might what we do in the elementary continuous improvement plan, how might that affect the follow-through on the middle school continuous improvement plan. Now, middle school has a new administrator, and so she was not familiar with the mid-year review. So that was one of my activities, actually, is that she and I did a side-by-side virtually. But we did a side-by-side walk through what the mid-year was like, because I was there as the instructional coach for them as well the previous year. So it was neat because I was able to say, well, this information here came from these Scantron Performance Series, suggested learning objectives, or whatever the case may be. But it was all built on how do we improve the opportunities and experiences of the kids every day. And so that's, these were all about really meeting with current administrators and looking at their goals from this past year, which yet to be determined how close we got. And I don't even know how we'll measure that yet, because everything changed midstream, a little beyond midstream. But also, what do we think our goals should be next year? Because I feel like they're going to have to be adjusted. So that, I mean, that's the 10 standards and 50 or so activities in the experiment, if an experiment of trying to become an administrator.
Well, it's very impressive. You did an outstanding job.
Well, awesome. Well, I thank you again for your time and your mentorship and allowing me to help create these ideas and then run with them. So thank you.
You're welcome.